There's opportunities to make crazy amounts of money that materialize online periodically.
Is there any vices that you're fighting at the moment?
Long-term thinking, scale, and execution, it's going to create billionaires from this world, in my opinion. Hormozy might be one of them. Mr. Beast, probably one of them. But like, there's going to be real billionaires minted from this era. I could talk about it all I want, but I'd rather just at the finish line be telling this story. Like, yeah, I saw that happen. This character emerged, and this is how we executed. Life's dynamic, and the more we submit to that and embrace it and build ourselves, the better off we're gonna be. Most guys just want a woman that's gonna make them exponentially better, like deep down. And I think a lot of guys are afraid to say that.
Before we start this video, I have one small favor to ask of you. If you've been enjoying the US tour so far and all the effort we put into making these videos as best as possible for you, please hit the subscribe button down below so we can help more people every single week. Thank you. We also talk about like the digital gold rush and the digital like space, like the space of just going after it. If you looked at digital gold rush before, or the gold rush in general, time is running out on that. Do you think time is running out now though?
On which one specifically? Like my view is there's opportunities to make crazy amounts of money that materialize online periodically. And like Amazon was one of those, early Facebook ads, like even Instagram. Like when you first used to be like Photoshop pictures of your fitness body, and like you could blow up, right? And make money. I think we're looking at one of the greatest ones that we're ever going to see with this TikTok shop moment, more specifically like short form revolution, just because the world is changing how we communicate information. You look at, the last 15, 20 years in the States, we used to Google stuff. Now we go to a new city. My wife starts TikToking things. She wants to visually see what does that restaurant have? But then you extrapolate that out to how we buy. And that's the entrance of TikTok Shop in like a fundamental new groundbreaking shift. And those are the moments where you don't need VC money. You don't need any of this stuff. You're just in tune with what's going on and you figure out how to build something. And there's a real fucking gold rush. So
how long do you know that window is going to be open?
I think we have like 12 to 18 months of it being really good. And understand me in the sense of like, it's not going to just abruptly go away. Just like Amazon hasn't gone away. Amazon only got bigger. But what happened, it got more difficult to build brands. It got more difficult to launch. You could still build a brand today. But if you go back to 2012, there were categories where you could literally come out with anything and it would rise to the top of search rank and you would organically be making money day one. And so TikTok's like that now. Like there's just, if you understand content, if you understand virality, if you understand these pieces, you have a competitive advantage over any old school industrial brand because they're always slow to move. They got the money, the resources, the marketing department, this, that, and the other thing. And 18-year-olds with iPhones are generating tens of millions of views and they don't even know that's going on yet.
And they don't even understand it.
Oh God, I mean, yeah, they don't even kind of understand it.
One of the things I learned from you that I really got a good insight on is when you said you surround yourself by younger people. I've never heard that, man. I've never, ever heard that. But if I just think about that a little bit deeper, when you look at older people, big VCs or the old bloated companies, they look down on people like you, people like me, people younger, and think it's not possible. It's cope.
Yep. I think I got to experience that firsthand when I sold Genius. Like I was that young kid, I sold to a private equity fund, and then I had to go sit in these boardrooms where I was largely like degraded. Like, often questioned, I'm not professional, I can't put together this, like why is he dressed like that? Like those are real things that happened to me despite being worth tens of millions of dollars at that point. I've got these suits in a boardroom looking at me in a particular way. And then I kind of zoom out and I look at the recipe for success over a sustained period of time. Because a lot of people get lucky. A lot of people have one hit. There's a song lyric I like. We're 3 minutes in this and I'm already quoting Drake. So get ready for a lot of these. But it's something like how you get hype off one shit, do that again. Like there's a lot of one hit wonders. But how do you have a career for 20 years of putting out bestsellers? How do you have a Kobe Bryant-esque career of 18 All-Star games, 5 championships? And I look at those guys as the recipe for winning. And it always comes through evolution. How many times did Kobe's game change? How many times has LeBron's game changed? How many different sounds has Drake embraced? And these are the guys that are doing it over the long term and most successful and most legendary. And you look closer and it's because they're in tune with change. And change comes from the younger generation. Right? Your parents, my parents, they hear a new song and they say, this shit sucks. right? Like
Yeah.
every time, like my dad's like, man, Tom Petty, that was real music. I'm like, well, hold on, like Kanye's like this crazy artist. Da, 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 da. Like, no, this is real artistry. He's like, nah, it sucks. And then you go listen to now I listen to Jimmy, my 23-year-old business partner stuff. And my initial inclination is like, man, they don't make music like they used. Wait, hold on. I'm not going to be that guy. Let me find out how to appreciate this. And then if you zoom that out further, I know I'm rambling on,
Not
but
at
then you
all.
look at where the money's being made. It's the same thing. That TikTok is a stupid dance app. You know what I mean? Like that's the narrative. Like it's people wasting their time. Just like Instagram was a stupid thing for pictures. And then you see multi billions being created. And then you go, oh, wait. So you have to be humble enough to say, the world changes. I'm getting older. My brain has started to, become this a certain way. And you have to learn how to be relatively plastic, evolve and be humble enough to take the things that are working from the generation that might not have it all figured out yet, but clearly has something going right for them.
What it is not having an emotional attachment to something that doesn't even fucking matter. It's a process.
Yeah.
Like TikTok is a vessel. TikTok Shop is a vessel that's working now for you and for many others. Why am I holding emotional attachment to something that I like or dislike? TikTok Shop doesn't like you. It doesn't care if you like it or not. People get so caught up in that. Is it organic? Is it ads? Is it sales calls? Is it no sales calls? Where it's what is working now?
Does it work or not?
Does it work or not? Talk me more through about those evolutions, because that's something interesting. So you mentioned like the sports stars, Tiger Woods or whatever, they evolved as time went on. What's the insight there? How do you evolve maybe your business model, maybe your idea? Like how did that work in your instance, let's say?
So if you look at what I've done, when I was starting, it was like all Amazon. And that was like my contrarian moment when I was coming into this game, ecom and really, let's call it sports supplements. Like I wanted to build a supplement company. To be a big supplement company, the day I started, you needed GNC, bodybuilding.com, Vitamin Shop, those are, big retailers, and bodybuilding.com was a big online retailer. I looked at this game going, this Amazon thing seems to be making a lot of money for people and no one's taking it seriously. Like, cause that's how I started. I would help brands sell their products on Amazon. So I'd go to these national brands that are doing 50 million in sales. We'd add another 10 million on Amazon. I'm going, guys, if you would double down, aren't you more profitable here? And they're like, no, we got the bodybuilding.com conference. We got this, that. I'm going, no, but I swear there's money being made here. And they're like, it's a discount site. Amazon doesn't respect our pricing. But all these reasons why it doesn't work.
Cool.
And eventually I got frustrated and I'm like, no, hold on. I can do this better than those guys. And that's where I started my brand. Because this is another saying I love. You can only tell people, you can't really tell people shit, but you can show them, right? I could tell those guys over and over again, this thing's really going, and they're not going to listen. But if I run up a brand that's doing $30 million a year in 3 or 4 years, then they're going to go, oh, yeah, okay, now we get it. And that's what I've come to realize over the years. Like you can't tell anyone anything, you can show them. But that process, I always remember those moments of those people having that emotional attachment to what was, right? And I remember never wanting to be that. So as Amazon inherently got more difficult and all the game changed, I was constantly looking for, well, how is this new thing becoming it, right? And one of the aha moments, I had identified TikTok 3 years ago. I did not know how to crack it, like period. I could not figure out how to scale brand on there. And it wasn't until a crazy circumstance, like crazy set of events came to be. I'll tell a story on here if you don't mind, that this is the first time I've told this. Because I really do believe with a lot of this stuff, you have to submit to the universe and kind of like put a level of trust in the process that most people aren't comfortable doing. And it's hard when you're not finding the answers. Like I think a lot of people see me now doing pretty good numbers and like, oh, he's successful. There was a 2-year period there where shit really struggled for me, like actually. And first time I told this story on a podcast, like what the big break was. I told you about my business partner, Jimmy, how we met. Do you remember, you're in tune with internet history. Do you remember when a deep fake of Joe Rogan went crazy viral? You remember that, right?
Yeah.
CoffeeZilla retweeted. Do you know anything about that story?
No, I don't remember the story specifically.
So that was my product. This is before I met Jimmy. I'm sitting there trying to figure out, I'm like, I got to the point where there's the Tate model for personal brand, right? So Tate had all these affiliates making 1 million accounts to lead back to Hustlers University. I go, that has to be able to work for a product. Like it has to be. So I hired a bunch of different VAs and people to experiment with different types of viral content. And I put together like an incentive program and all this stuff. One of them, I was very loosely involved in the actual thing. One of them figures out there's a thing called 11 Labs where you can take a voice and then they figure out like, oh, there's a long story short, they create a video where it's Joe Rogan talking to Andrew Huberman. And they still talk about this today on their podcast. It was like one of the first shocking moments of like, oh shit, this AI stuff's really crazy. And you can tell if you watch closely, like it's clearly doctored, but this dude puts that video out and it gets no organic views. Like it doesn't go viral. It ends up on Jimmy Farley's feed, my business partner. He grabs that video, he puts it on Twitter. He goes, holy shit, is this deepfake? Like, how is this even legal? And I see it. A friend sends it to me, and I'm like, "Oh shit! Like, we got to get that. What's going on here?" Like, I'm unaware of what. Like, I wouldn't approve something that egregious. And within like 20 minutes, it's picking up some steam. Nothing crazy on Twitter. Like 20,000 views. An attorney comments, "It's not legal." top comment. I'm like, "All right, this ain't good," but I'm still not stressed too much. I text my attorney, and I'm like, "Hey, we have a situation. This happened. Want to make it go away." It's Super Bowl Sunday. This is all happening in the morning. Halftime of that game, CoffeeZilla retweets that tweet, Jimmy's. And he goes, deepfake technology is here and we are not ready for it. That thing goes nuclear. I'm talking like, I think 25, 30 million views on Twitter. Andrew Huberman comments on it. That's not us. Like, my attorney proactively reaches out to him. Like, listen, this is the situation. We've made no money on it. Our founder will personally donate to one of your charities. Like, shit, this is an issue. And during that whole time, Jimmy's this, 20-year-old kid at the time who's actually a TikTok marketing genius. And no one's giving him the time of the day. Nobody. He has like 30,000 followers on Twitter. He's trying to build a little name for himself, making a little internet money, but nothing serious. He tweets on there to that thread. He goes, if anyone wants to legally make money on TikTok without breaking the law, hit me up. And so I did. At first, he's a little rattled. He's like, listen, man, like, I didn't know that was you. I thought it was like Chinese scammers, da-da-da-da-da. And we get in touch. I fly out to Arizona. He has a roommate, Tabs Chocolate. This is I know the guy. This is like an influential interview in internet history that I put together. Like a lot of people saw this and started building this model. But Tabs had successfully pulled off the tape model for their product. Different no TikTok shop yet. This is a year before TikTok shop. Jimmy goes, bro, I can do that for you. Just give me a shot. Like he takes me out to dinner in Arizona. He's a super cool kid. I'm like, yeah, bet. Like run it. It's like he wants like $7,000 or something, And he's taking this money super seriously. He's making no money on it. He just wants to prove. I remember he puts together this like crazy presentation for me of all the things he's gonna do. I didn't read it. I was like, just go. He's like, no, can we please Zoom? Like, can we? I was like, just go. And a month goes by and like there's not a lot of results. And then like week 5 or 6, we have creators start going nuclear, like crazy viral on these accounts. And all of a sudden my business goes from like, this is top shelf that's doing 2-3 million a month now. We like 2 to 2.5 million a month now. We go from like, at the time we're doing like 150, 200 grand a month to like the business 4X's in like a month and a half. And I'm going, hold on, kid. Like you got something super fucking special here. Like hold on. And since then he's ended up, basically being like family to me, one of the best people I know. And he's scaled his own coaching program. Like we realized we needed more creators. That was the bottleneck. Like we only had 10 creators. He's like, we need more for the brands. So he launches Creators Corner, a coaching program where kids it's literally the best offer I've ever seen. You need no skills, you need an iPhone, and you need to be able to create, like sometimes it's faceless, sometimes it's AI, but he launches this program to get us more creators. Brand continues to go nuclear. It becomes like our secret weapon. We invest in other brands. We started a couple more. And that was the genesis of this whole thing. Like that was me, I guess, being humble enough to take a shot on him. But you look at the serendipity of the universe, of just the chances of us coming together under those circumstances in any capacity are like, they're low.
But it's also you being humble enough to not say, who the fuck is this kid on Twitter?
For sure.
Right? That's the actual moment. Or being
mad.
Right? Exactly. Looking at it and looking at his success or his approach and thinking, oh, this isn't real. So what was the what was a trigger to say, okay, let's put my faith into this guy? Like, what success leaves clues. So what are those traits? Because it's the same people that show up in a coaching program that succeed or start a business succeed. Seems like he has like something that you don't have, but you did it though.
No,
You're
success
genius.
leaves clues, and there's a very clear energy to me of I've had this almost every time. I can tell when I'm going to be aligned with someone and like want to do business with them long term, and it was so strong with him, it wasn't even funny. Like you can kind
Mm,
of pick up on that, but there's like I mean, by contrast, his roommate, the tabs guy, it was like the total opposite. There was like an arrogance and like an intensity. A young kid, so I
mm,
don't mean this as a knock in any way. Like he's successful. He'll continue to figure it out. But it was just super contrast of like where Jimmy's like, I am not even going to make money on this deal with you.
mm.
I just want to prove to you that I have skills, and I want to prove that like he put his best foot forward. And then I think it's summed up well. You got a tattoo now, and it's like it's a Bible verse. It's you give what you get, or you get it's like something like that.
Mhm.
Actually, you reap what you sow. But there was like 5 different versions. Hold on, I don't want to give you the exact.
Take your time on that.
Uh,
While you pull that up, so I have an interesting insight on this. This was told to me by a guy. His name was Michael. He said that every relationship has a pit bull and a gentleman dimension.
yeah,
So every single relationship, two guys or even like male female, there's someone who's the pit bull, who's like logical, straight, goes straight at it, doesn't have any kind of empathy for the scenario. Just like here's a plan, go and execute. The other person in the relationship is going to be much more of the gentleman. They're emotive. They have empathy for the scenario. So they are basically like pulling people along in a much more of an elegant way. But every relationship operates like that. You could be the pit bull in that scenario. You could also be the gentleman in the next scenario. The problem is if two pit bulls come side by side, which could have been like you and the tabs dude,
yeah,
and then there's an explosion. It's basically like a knock-on effect. It's happened to me with people that I've worked with, happened with clients that I've worked with in our business. Two of the same personalities. It's like the universe, as you said. They clash. Whereas if there's a small bit of an ebb and flow, that's what happens in relationships, right?
yeah.
Then it's much more of a natural pursuit and how you were able to find that alignment and say, right, let's go build shit in the future.
And as a general, I take it, if you want to elaborate on it further for me, from my own understanding, but there's a spectrum with that, right? Like you could be more, because I would say in general, I'm more of the gentleman, more of the emotive person.
Mm,
And in this particular relationship, I'm definitely the pit bull. Like
interesting.
definitely. Um, that's interesting. That is how it works typically.
It's how basically like the kind of push and pull mechanisms
Yeah, yeah,
work.
yeah.
And if you observe, let's say like anyone you meet, right? Let's say if someone else comes in with like an arrogance or cocky or overconfident, you just can't jibe with that person on the same method that you would with someone else. Let's say your wife, my wife, we just have that polarity, right? But it's just guys don't think about it in that way.
Yeah.
They don't think about it from that perspective. But there is.
Yeah.
There is that. And people can observe that about your business, or people can interact with your business in a better way. I'll give an example. I have someone that works with us, his name's Tom. We have a very strong relationship because we are polar opposite. I am much more get up, get the fucking work done. He's much more helping people, coaching people, teaching people.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more. I think if you tie back to one of the things that move the needle, that tattoo is Proverbs 11:25, and it's a generous person will prosper. Whoever refreshes others will be refreshed.
Hmm.
And I'm generally known on the internet at that point in like a smaller scale, but it's like I was the guy that sold a company and had money. And so I think a lot of people prior to him, I remember I got burnt bad by this kid on Twitter who basically said he could do something similar and similar deal. I threw him like $5,000. I'm like, give this a shot. And it was the biggest joke ever. And like looking back, he was clearly just interested in getting that
Get in the
one
bag.
paycheck from me.
Get in the
Yeah, that
bag.
one little paycheck from me. And so Jimmy was so refreshing on the other end of that, where he's like, hey, I'm literally not here.
Mhm.
I will not make money for a long period of time. And he's like this to this day. Like if Top Shelf has a big pullback, he gets X amount. And he's like, no, keep my money. He goes, keep my money this month. Like I don't deserve it. I'm sorry, I wasn't on it. Like, no, take your fucking money, bro.
Mm.
But that's just kind of the personality that is increasingly rare when you merge it with like he's actually very forward thinking. And that's the problem in today's world. And if you want to shift into like, you want to talk different cultures, we have gotten way too far away from long-term thinking.
Oh,
You,
dude,
you,
you're in the right fucking place.
yeah, you look at like, you look at like what built our current tech world. Jeff Bezos spent, I don't know how much, but an insane amount of money. One of his first charitable donations
Mm.
was to create a clock in Texas that will tick literally forever to remind everyone to think long term, because like literally that, and Amazon was built with that. Amazon forewent profits, this, that, and everything, because they were playing the long game of building this conglomerate, this, we won't call it a monopoly if the US government's listening, but like a real machine. And Google was the same way. And honestly, Zuckerberg, like for whatever it's worth, like same deal. And that was the last golden era of US progress in tech. And then you go look at like China now, right? I know we want to talk about that maybe a little bit, but like they're playing a very long game, because no one's gonna like militarily defeat the United States anytime soon. But you can sure as hell outwork them. You can sure as hell instill these values. You can sure as hell instill like a very, again, a long-term thing. Whereas the US, it's just collapsed. And you see it here in Miami more than ever. Like dudes want the quickest paycheck to buy the quickest car so they can impress the quickest girl. And unfortunately, that gets no one anywhere long-term. And the more that's like seen, I think the better off we'll be. But we're in that part of the cycle where it's like, weak men are going to create hard times, and we're going to have to figure like that. That's where we're at.
Yeah, exactly. Well, at the end of the day, right, if you take the soft path, it's going to be rough roads and smooth roads and rough, right?
Yeah.
And I always talk about the infinite game in that regard, because this is how I've been doing this for half a decade. You've been playing the game for much longer than me. It's not about the short-term cash. And it's almost like if you optimize for the short term, everything else crumbles. So there's a few things here. There's one, the results, right? Which is like, we're not going to actually get the money we want. It's almost like when you push so hard at the target, you almost push away the target, right? The second side of it then is the culture you build. So we have companies, people that work for companies are super entitled, whether it's big tech companies or smaller guys that are working with people, they expect more. I think it comes from the top down, 100%.
Yeah.
100%. It's people instilling that values. Whereas like if you're a good leader and you're a good leader for your people, you're creating an atmosphere for them to do their best work, them to explore, them to come up with ideas, them to give you some bullshit PDF that you're not even going to read, but it's because they feel safe. It's that actual term is called a circle of safety. It's you create an environment that allows people to do their best work. And then if something goes wrong, yes, it goes wrong. You're running a $2 million a month business. Of course it's going to go wrong. If it didn't, then why isn't everyone else doing it, right?
Yeah.
So it's almost like playing an infinite game with a finite solution creates just this horrific spiral, which is why, people will DM you to sell short form and get you on a podcast 5,000 times. They're thinking way too short term. Whereas like if we could decrease that pressure, probably build up the bank a bit more, maybe work a job if you need to in the beginning, or work for someone, and then go make that kind of pursuit. I think it's a very interesting observation, right? How much people are doing it? Very little.
Very few. And even that's one of the things in, $1 Million Brand Club, the whole mentorship, like because I'm public about numbers, Genius is a good one. The reason we were able to, I never raised any money. I never took any extreme debt. That business was able to bootstrap from 0 to over 100 million in sales in 4 years because everything was reinvested. Like I was not pulling money out. Like I didn't take a salary. Like I still had my consulting stuff. I was making like 10, 12 grand a month. Like that was more than enough to pay my bills. I lived at home the first 2 years. Like we were doing 10 million a year by the time I got my first condo with my wife. And that's the approach I took. Like that's what it actually took. So then on the other side of that, yeah, you got a business that makes $8 million a year, or whatever, 7.5, and is stable as hell. But it's because I doubled down, reinvested. And that's what I think a lot of people are afraid of, or just not trained to even think about. Maybe it's not cool. Like the second they see that available 100,000, they want to grab it and go buy the watch or whatever. And they're trading off stability and strength of the business. Because in my opinion, like a business isn't a business until you get to like 5 million-ish profit in my world, 5 million-ish EBITDA. And like there, you're like, okay, we can do some stuff here. We can take some bets on influencers, like whatever. But until then, it's like, if you're not double, triple, quadrupling down, then you're risking the long-term health of the business.
Let's dive into the area there where you mentioned you were basically making 10 million a year and you were still living at home. So you talk about the grind and especially your videos.
Not making. we were doing 10 million in revenue.
Revenue, of course.
We were making $1.5 million, 2 million.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. And people do that distinction online all the time. 10 million. It's like, no, you're not putting 10 million in your pocket, right?
Yeah. And dude, it's for your business as well, right? It's the hardest type of business, D2C, or else whether it's true fulfillment. It is the hardest. There's so much shit going on. It's physical products, right? But about that grind phase, you made videos about that, and I really appreciate those videos because people see their final rep, They see the glasses, they see the watch, they think, fuck it, it's easy. Talk me through like specifically around that kind of grind phase that did you ever think you wouldn't get through it? That's a good way to put it.
All the time. And I think I've almost come to enjoy it at this point. It's like does anything matter if you feel like you're just going to get it immediately? And back then it would create like an intense anxiety and pressure and stress. And nowadays it's just more, I have something that I don't know if everyone has. I don't know if people can bring it out of them. I hope they can, because it's a beautiful thing. But there's this people talk about obsession nowadays, and they don't know what that, really means. It's like when you're willing to give yourself to something entirely, it is fucking different. Like, period. When you become that thing, you are living in a way that it's optimal as fuck, because nothing else matters. Now it sucks to everyone else looking. Like, relationships start burning and things crumble. But you look at anyone who's done anything of substance, I can't think of anyone that wasn't truly obsessed at the center of that. You look at Bezos talks about it. I mean, to build Amazon, you are obsessed. Conor McGregor from your home country, he's one of my favorite on that regard. You listen to any of his old interviews on that come up and what it took. The image of what he's going to become is burning right here. You feel it coming out of, everything he says back when he's sitting in that little shitty apartment in Dublin.
I know.
He's like, I'm already the 2-belt champ. And that's all he thinks. But what people forget too, because now it's become cool to manifest or whatever, they forget that he went to the gym every day and died. They forget that he came home and didn't go out and go on he wasn't doing his cocaine benders yet. Like, they forget that he was single track minded with that one girl sitting there to support him on everything he did, and nothing else mattered. And that is at the center of what it takes in today's world. And one of the first times I experienced that was when I wanted to walk on to my college basketball team. I played high school ball, and then I decided basketball was my life growing up. That's where like a lot of my upbringing, like everything comes from basketball with me. And then after high school, I was so tired of it. I didn't want to play anymore. Took my freshman year off of college. I could have walked on maybe out of high school. Like they said, maybe we got a spot for you, but who knows? Sophomore year, I start coaching again at a high school, fall in love with the game again. I go, I have to play. From that moment, I had about a year and a half to prepare from the day the high school season ended until tryouts of the next year. I start pouring myself into that game like crazy. Again, like I went from partying to never touching alcohol to, I went from staying up late to sleeping in, being sure I could be up early to hit the weights. My wife supported me. I remember her still, like we'd go to the gym, she'd be rebounding balls for me. That was all we did. Like it was all we did. And midway through that journey, my college team that I'm trying to walk on for wins the D2 national championship, which is amazing, but it also made my likelihood of walking onto that team way less likely, because now all of a sudden they can get any recruit they want in the entire country, and like that's the place to be. I remember thinking that. It was like midsummer, and I'm like kind of heartbroken by all of it, but I'm like, I'm too far in this. All I can do is give everything, and then I will be happy. And I found myself evolving. Like I started thinking like, oh, well, I need to get to know the players. I'm not going to make this team off talent alone. I need to be a zero effort pickup. Let me be around the coach more. On my route home from school, let me walk by the coach's office and, hey, Coach Dominguez, I'm Rob, like thinking about trying out, congratulations, just being real cool, all while giving it my, everything I had. And it became my life for those 18 months. And I ultimately did make that team. And I still remember that entire process. It was like high school had a similar thing where I didn't make the team. I wanted to make varsity sophomore year, blah, blah, blah. And I found that same obsession and I gave everything to it. And that translated to me getting the result I wanted. And I've taken that same energy and approach into the business world.
Always.
I'm yapping a lot here, but does that make,
not at all,
make
man.
sense?
Sports is the best teacher, because especially individual, when I know basketball is team, but it's individual, the pursuit you had.
Yeah.
It's competitive. But competition rises all boats, right? And the fact that they won, it's like, fuck, this is a good evolution. Like you want more people in the industry because that makes you better, and it also makes the industry better. That's part of the Infinite Game too. We're all kind of progressing in that regard.
I might break Infinite Game down for me like entirely. I might help popularize that. I love it.
Yeah, it's awesome, man. So basically, the whole concept of an infinite game is that like you don't sacrifice long-term goals for short-term happiness. You're playing much more of an ongoing, like ever pursuit. Like you're an ecom guy, you're gonna be building brands. Whether you sell this brand or not, it doesn't matter. You're gonna be doing it again. When you're 60, you're gonna be investing in 20-year-olds, right? It's just playing a longer term horizon to the point that you're not gonna basically jeopardize your values, your core values, what you believe in for short-term success. Dude, we could talk about loads of controversial shit here. We could do much more views, but it's not really aligned to your values or my values. So it's like, what do we want to truly build? That's why, and the contrast to that then is get the bag, get the girl,
Miami.
flash it,
The contrast is
Dubai,
Miami.
you know? So as a result, these guys will have you can still have a meteoric rise. We're not sacrificing goals here, but it's just we're doing it in a way that's going to basically be a 10, 20, 30-year process. And as a result, you keep the bag, right?
Yeah.
So you'll still make your mil a month or your 10 mil a month. And I think that for me has taken the stress and pressure off because, dude, I'm doing these interviews every single week. I'm building my business as well at the same time. Like we're not
Fuck
doing
yeah.
2 million a year, but we're doing well,
Yeah,
right?
grinding, yeah.
But as a result of that, I could easily get very anxious and what's the word, like comparison effect.
Yeah.
But I don't. I just take the fucking lessons and I learn, right?
So how do you contrast the long-term thinking, infinite, with the reality that we could wake up and get hit by a car?
Well, the alignment between what you're doing and what it is that you want to do. Like I know that you wouldn't want to do anything else. Wake up, build, go to the gym, take care of your kids, and so on. I'm the exact same. I'll wake up, I'll record, I'll build, I have a good team, I'll travel. So I'm doing the stuff that I want to do. I'm not like putting shit up my
All while
nose.
committed to the long-term goal.
Yeah,
What a
I'm not-
beautiful fucking answer. Like
and I-
actually. And that was simple. That was clean.
And the logic is I'm not basically leaning into like the hedonic treadmill and devices, which I've done.
Yeah.
You've done as well. I've
Yeah.
done as well. You know, I've drank a ton, I've partied a ton, and that stuff is just not in alignment with myself. And that's why if I look at something, maybe the revenue could be bigger, maybe we could reduce our churn a bit more, we could do X, Y, and Z. It's like, all right, because when the problems come, the problems are going to come, but it's just the problem solution continuum, as Hormozy describes. We just get different levels of problems. So when I open up my Slack in the morning, yeah, things blow up. But who the fuck cares? Because we're going to be there for a long time doing it,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
You
I
know?
love it. Great answer. That was awesome.
Appreciate it, man.
Um,
Tell me a little bit more about your creative side, because you have a unique way to create your content. The guys mentioned to you beforehand too, like you see it everywhere. It's just very unique. What's your creative process for doing that? Do you want to grow and monetize your podcast, but you don't know where to begin? Have you tried all the tricks and hacks, but nothing has worked? Have you been wasting time, money, and energy and seeing an analytics chart with no growth? That's where Evox comes in. We've been helping podcasts grow and monetize their shows for many years. We've grown shows to over 100 million views, done over 10 million downloads, generated over $2 million in only the last year alone. And we can help you grow and monetize your own podcast. We've had some shows go from absolutely zero. We've had some of the biggest influencers in the world come to us to help and improve their show. So if you want to learn exactly our podcast growth flywheel and exactly how we can do this for you and completely replicate success, schedule a call right down below with myself and we can go through the exact model for you and to grow your podcast this year.
I'm just obsessed with blazing something unique to me. Period. Like I've always idolized the guys that aren't afraid to, or girls that aren't afraid to draw outside of the lines, you know, that aren't afraid to push limits, that aren't afraid to disrupt. Because the truth is that's how the world moves forward in any capacity. It's the ones that are like crazy enough or whatever. And I didn't realize until I got more on the internet how many people are held back by others' expectations for them. Like how many phenomenal ideas are out there that don't get unleashed because we're told to do X, Y, and Z, you know? And I've thought about this more philosophically, like, why am I that way? And like, I can only trace it back to like being a Kanye fan when I was young, you know? And I just remember him in a world of gangster rap showing up in a pink polo and a backpack, you know, as confident as hell, dressed as best as he could. And I remember quotes like, you know, if you're a fan of Kanye West, you're a fan of yourself. And a lot of those traits, like he wants to be a reflection of like individuality and people willing to take shots. And you fast forward and that person has never changed. Maybe they've gone a little clinically insane, but like the progression over the 15 years, you know, this is a guy who's coming off a embarrassment with the Taylor Swift situation, taking the mic from her. The president of the United States calls him a jackass. Like it doesn't get much lower. he disappears for a year, shows up at that same VMAs the next year, and comes out in a red suit singing Runaway, probably one of the best songs of all time, debuted it there for the first time. And that level of outside the box thinking and creativity has always been a spark. It's always asked me, it's always enabled me to ask why things are the way they are. And often there's not a good answer for it. Like when I was starting Genius, as simple as this is, I was like, why are there not products that are dosed to like the exact scientific level? And everyone in the industry took that as like, well, this is just what we do. We put it behind a prop blend. We like, this is just what we do and we make money. And I was like, well, maybe people respect like the actual science of the workout ingredients a little more. And like that was the genesis of this basic idea that you should supplement smarter. Like that was the tagline. And that the ability to act on that idea rather than being like everyone else resulted in life-changing everything for me. So I take that same approach. It's more of like a ground up thinking of like, why are things the way they are? Like you look at Instagram or that algorithm and my content style, it's like the basics are there. Obviously you have to disrupt scrolling, you have to retain people, you have to provide some sort of value, you know, saves matter. Same with YouTube. Like there's the pieces of that. And then go paint the picture yourself. Like learn the rules so you can break them. And that's just a formula that I think most people are like that. And I don't think enough people have the confidence to
execute,
act on it.
Yeah, because it's like what you're doing is you're just telling a story of a brand or a product or whatnot. But the way that it's packaged, even in Instagram Reels, is just so elegant. Like for instance, your Iman video on YouTube, like that was really well shared amongst people all across Instagram for how it was designed. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
The Iman on building Big Day?
Yeah. That process was just constantly shared by people because people were like, how is this created? Like from the design to the packaging to the production, whoever your team is a fucking beast, by the way. So I think like taking that approach versus someone could say the same thing and it would not hit. But also there's one point that's interesting here as well is that you have the authority frame. A big thing that I talk about in this podcast is having the authority figure. You've got the receipts, you got the $30 million exit. So it's like when you say something, it's the same as if I had said something, but yours carries a lot more weight.
Yeah. When people talk to me about content too, because I actually love it. I love the personal branding game.
Same.
It's all fun to me. And I think you look at your advantages first, like what makes you unique. And so the kid who's building his business ground up, like in public, day one, is not going to make the same style of content as me. But they could get even bigger, right? By leaning into who they are and what they do. And that was just kind of where, when I was looking at like, okay, I want to do this game, I want to do this world. What is one of my biggest advantages that most of these people in the space don't have? And it was like, oh, I built a company. Yeah, the receipts.
I actually did the work.
Weird, yeah. And so the challenge I gave myself, which is something that I still wrestle with a lot, is like, well, let me do it again, all while doing this, which is actually a crazy undertaking because what goes into personal brand and what goes into content, there's a reason these guys can only do that, right? Like imagine having to go from that hat of like, okay, what are these reels looking like? And what's the what's the post schedule on IG? And now we're going to tackle YouTube and I still need to do this on TikTok, all while building a team and infrastructure on the brand side. That's like, what's product innovation? You know, how are we scaling these creators? All these different, like, and I have to juggle those hats. And it's beautiful and it's insane too, because it's like, I can make content based off this, which is great. But then also like, okay, this has to go well and that has to run on time. And I find myself doing a ton of different jobs. And my biggest advice on this for people that want to do a lot is people are everything. So what's enabled me to do this at a pretty high level has been getting the right people in there and taking care of them. I know you started to kind of allude to that earlier, but it's how can you get the innovators, the one-of-ones, all those types, and give them a level of freedom and autonomy to invent and create without being over-stifling. And that's become like my whole job and world. And that's what lately I've been saying, like Rob the Bank isn't even a real person. It's become a curation of others' packaging based on what they know about me. And it's beautiful because that's how it reaches scale while still having that good key message. When I started creating content, it's like, hey guys, I did this and that and whatever, and nobody cares. There's billionaires on social media that give some of the best advice that have the smallest audiences because they don't know how to make content. So it's like if your goal is to reach a level of scale, like look at Hormozy. He's filthy at making content, disgusting. He's in the same rooms as Mr. Beast. He comes from the Russell Brunson world. And so he took like, okay, he knows some real business sauce, but he had to bring that packaging. Whereas
Mm.
there's like literal, I remember when Michael Rubin was posting forever, and I was like, yeah, this guy has $1 billion company and like no one's following him. You know, it's like
It's so wild, right? Whereas the contrast is some 21-year-old flashing a fucking Rolex.
that
They'll
people
have
love.
people be like, oh, I love
Yeah.
this following this approach. Now, I've actually had a similar instance in terms of I think content on its own is a business in itself. Like that, actually running that, scheduling that process is basically a business in itself, which is the reason why my business
The content
became.
side.
Yeah, exactly. As in like
100%.
the mental frameworks of okay, there's this,
No, the
there's the
second you flip it into thinking about a business, then you can scale it.
100%.
Like I was like, wait, I'm not posting on Instagram. I need a scheduling team. And
Yeah,
I need the
exactly.
second you do that, then you can scale.
Yeah.
And until you do that, then it's your thing. You can't scale.
Well, there's also, you need to understand what the goal is, right? Start with the end in mind. Always is that there has to be the product, the feature, or else you're just going fucking nowhere in circles. Because, like for me, for instance, our business is a complement to the podcast and vice versa. So they're set up in a way that everything works for that goal. We go back to the infinite game, is that everything that I set up in my life is moving towards that goal. Does that make sense? Same with yourself. Even if it's like indirect, you're talking about some random product you're analyzing, that still benefits your initial
The
product.
net. 100%,
Exactly, right?
yeah.
So what did you learn from people like Hormozy, Chris Williamson, and those type of people? Like what have you learned from like that style of creator first and then product in the back end, and how does that kind of work together in your mind when you look from observation?
Oh, Chris, we got to leave it TBD because I still think launching an energy drink is crazy, but it's a good product. And I know he had like good partners. So we'll see on that one. Hormozy in particular was a pretty big inspiration because I just saw how he kind of blitzed the game with like a very tactical and clear approach. Like he's a guy that wants to win for sure. And he saw this is where the game's going. And I think he put together the right playbook for it. And he has just done nothing but execute relatively. I'm sure there's hiccups, but he's done a good job. And everyone knows his name as a result. And so I found that to be, one of the people I think it's cool because he also in that process, there's this battle on the internet of what people think is rich and what's like actual wealth. And there's a few people that create real wealth with the internet, and then there's a few people that have a couple $100,000 a month, like months, like those short-term runs, and everyone thinks they're God, and then they go away, and maybe they have enough money to live like a normal Miami life or something. But who's actually creating? I know billionaires, and like even my business partner, he's 300-ish liquid, like 300 million liquid, and like that life is a lot different than someone who made $1 million and didn't pay their taxes and all that. And so Hormozy's coming at it in a way that like he clearly understood real wealth, and he's going to forego the short term of like immediately selling a course or something while building this big audience. And all the while he's going to be trying to make these equity investments in businesses that can potentially sell, because that's where most of the wealth comes from. It's privately held businesses that sell. Mine too, right? Like even Genius, as we're scaling this thing, on paper, maybe the value of the business is whatever. So maybe I'm like a double-digit millionaire on paper, but then when you actually get that liquid, that is so much different than, you make $2 million a year for 5 years. That doesn't actually equate to that much money. Like that sounds insane, right? To most people, if you make $2 million a year living in New York, you're left with like $1 million. Then your lifestyle is probably $500,000. So you do that for 10 years, and what is that? $4 or $5 million bucks?
At best.
At best. Whereas you build a company and you exit it and you learn all those traits, it's just asymmetrical, intense return. So I went into this social media thing knowing the money's never going to be made on the flash, the course, any of that. Like all those are pieces of this game, but it's like there's a level of long-term thinking, scale, and execution that's going to create billionaires from this world, in my opinion. Hormozy might be one of them. Mr. Beast, probably one of them. But like there's going to be real billionaires minted from this era. And like I said, I could talk about it all I want, but I'd rather just at the finish line be telling this story. Like, yeah, I saw that happen. This character emerged, and this is how we executed.
Yeah, I think that transition between cash flow businesses to equity style businesses is almost like the progression of an entrepreneur. It's like it's easier to go get the client, the couple of clients, do a rev share here or there, just to get yourself foot in the door, and then work your way up. It's just interesting to look at Genius because that was always a business that had equity. Just you didn't realize it
Mhm.
until you got to that point, right? Until that transition. Content is only on the front end. It's nothing to do with. It's not about making money in the front end. It's about the back end. It's like selling shovels during the gold rush.
Yeah.
You don't make money digging for gold. You make money selling the shovels. In that regard, how does that feed into how you've been building out your current company, how you've been building out the other brands that you have now, because there's multiple other ones,
Yeah.
right? So let's say your affiliates, how you're getting them to grow the brand. How's that process coming along right now and where the gaps are?
So let's talk $1 Million Brand Club and the general approach there first. Building Top Shelf in public, and we have 2 others, 2 I don't talk about, and I'm heavily involved in the operations of those. And I hate it. I did it with Genius. It was my entire life. And balancing content with those things. I love the end result. Like when this Top Shelf rebrand comes out and if we get her lost into everyone's hands across the country, I'll love that. Don't get me wrong. There's a component of there that's awesome. Meanwhile, we've got Evil Goods, which I've talked about publicly, that our little investment branch, it's me, Jimmy, and our other partner, the super high net worth guy. You know, we wrote a little check in that business. We brought Jimmy's creators, our secret sauce, and we don't do anything else. And that brand went from 0 to we're going to do 1.5 million the 3rd month in business.
Fuck.
And we invested like 40 grand. And that could be like a 9-figure thing where we're not operating it. And I'm going, though, and we got like a, you know, because of $1 Million Brand Club, we got a crazy deal. And like, those are the things I want to be part of. I would rather make 10 of those where it doesn't require the operational work of running a company. Where you can still get that potential upside of like, hey, we're the investors in this thing. And even if we only own 20%, but this guy runs it to 100 million, that's $20 million with only capital outlaid, a very small amount of capital. And I think that was my vision with $1 Million Brand Club. We've done 4 other investments on our portfolio side that I'll start talking about more. And all have been modestly successful at this point because we get the benefit of kind of seeing behind the scenes, helping them build, and then we can pull the trigger when they need capital.
So you're basically offering insight then, obviously cash, but then you're dropping in your insight.
Exactly. Insight, and then we can often bring more of the affiliates that Jimmy's training.
And infrastructure.
Exactly.
So everything, it's done with you with equity component.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the game. And so having capital plus an edge, like that's kind of the cheat code. And I mentioned these time periods in history. Right now, the edge is having kids that can create content, period. Like having them create for your brand is the edge because it's commission only, like the way TikTok Shop works. If Sydney, for example, the Sydney Garcia, shout out Sydney, wherever she is on social. And actually shout out Jacqueline. Let's talk Jacqueline. Because Sydney, you've been MIA, and I need you on her loss. And I need you on our other brand. Where you been? But Jacqueline's a great example. I think Jacqueline made $150,000 last month. As a 22-year-old kid, young woman. Sorry, I call them kids too much. They're all growing up. But Jacqueline, if Jacqueline creates for your brand, she made $250K. The brand probably did $1 million, right? That's spread out across a couple brands. But if I pay Jacqueline $50K, the brand probably made 500 revenue. And so there's not 1 million Jacquelines out there. All the Jacquelines of the world right now come from Jimmy's Creators Corner. Like he trains them, he brings them up, he gives them their first brand deals. And the ones that really develop are part of our ecosystem and secret sauce. So we can do deals where we don't have to invest in it's not even a cash thing. It's like, hey, we have 10 Jacquelines that are going to come run your product if you sign this deal with us. And we can take it from, hey, you're doing a couple 100,000, just like Top Shelf, to 2 million, right? And that value in and of itself, I wish it would last forever. But other people are trying to train Jacquelines now. And like other people are learning, hey, Jacqueline made 150 grand. Rob just shouted it out. Like other people are going to try to do that, right? Yeah. But this is the time period right now to go for it. And so that's kind of that's how we think about it. I'm really trying to monopolize this moment in TikTok history. Because it reminds me of Amazon all over again, where we have all the pieces. And so how can we maximize this actual game?
Well, this just seems super unique, right? And like the Jacqueline example is that there's always the 1% of people that will just fucking crush it. Like just run with it and just crush it, you know? So it's just finding them, right? You have the best clients, the best customers. There's always 1% that's like the best. Now, how would you contrast that to, let's say, working with Jack Hopkins? So you sponsored his events. Is there a different model there? Like, is that for more brand awareness in contrast to the affiliate approach?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
for sure.
How do you think about that?
I love Jack, and I think it's a really good branding play, and I think it goes a long way. But with Jack's audience and his personal brand, you typically don't make money on those types of deals.
Mm.
It's more of like an association, bigger picture thing, right? Because as great as he is, you do the math on like, you know, what, it was got 200,000 subs on YouTube or whatever.
Mm.
And so that audience is X amount of size. And he's able to command, just because of the market, like a certain salary, right? Off of that. And then you zoom out on like, remember when I said Instagram was a gold rush?
Mm.
When those early days of Instagram were up, when like Shreds athletes, I don't know if you remember them, they would post these Photoshop photos and they'd get 1 million likes.
Mm.
You could pay that person probably a couple grand for a
Just their
product
abs.
post. Huh?
Just their abs.
Yeah, pretty
Yeah.
much.
Dude, I remember seeing the old OG Mike Thurston videos like that.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
10 years ago.
Yeah.
Just him in a mirror, just shredded.
Yeah.
And he was one of the first like IG influencers who like was built off the physique.
Yeah.
And then it grew, of course.
And he was printing because it was like organic back then, right?
Yeah.
And so the math on that was like Shreds went and put out $1 million to all these influencers and made 10 million. And then as more people started paying the influencers, what happened?
Mm-hmm.
The price went up, and therefore the brand returns came down. And so we're going to see, and that's where influencers are now in today's world. And Jack more fits that traditional like influencer mold, although he's doing a lot of other smart things to like, he's not an influencer in the traditional sense, but he more fits that, right? Whereas these affiliates, they are currently probably underpaid relative to the sales they're generating. But what's happening? Again, I'm here talking about it. And so brands are fighting over paying them. And as more brands pay them, they make more money and the brand's profit goes down. So we're just at a unique time right now, like an actual gold rush.
I actually have a bit of an insight there from the podcast space. So we do sponsorships for brands.
Yeah.
So let's say you're AG1, 8 Sleep, Oracle, Big Boys. The sponsorship space for podcasting is still super novel. People are using CPMs and shit, but CPMs is like an awful way to track it. So like the unique insight that I've had on that, because like our business will put these sponsorships on a bunch of podcasts as like a network. If you imagine HubSpot network.
Yeah, of course.
Is I just said the CPM stuff was just stupid because Rob and Rob's podcast is much bigger than his podcast. It's his brand. So we just went with like a flat rate approach, which is like Rob can command 5K an episode, 10K a month, 20K a month. And it basically has crushed it because of the fact that the market hasn't caught up to it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, exactly.
So we're also like managing paid interviews for people, and paid interviews, dude, is fucking, you'd be surprised who pays.
And that's way outside the box. Yeah.
And like, this is just like left field. So let's go back to, remember I mentioned to you earlier about identifying something with non-emotion. So we manage, let's say, a bunch of podcasts, a lot. We had a lot of inbound people being like, hey, can I come on this podcast? And then the host would say, no, I'm not doing it. I'm only doing it if I get paid. And initially I was like, no, getting paid to do interviews, unethical, don't want to do it. But this guy was like, no, I want this person to pay me, otherwise I'm not doing it. And I was like, okay, fine, let's do it. Let's just manage the sales process. And then it just kept on snowballing and snowballing. A sales process started to build. Turns out a year and a half later, all the big shows are doing paid interviews, you know? So it's just like, there's an opportunity, there's a time and window, and you need to jump on it.
Yep.
So even that at the moment is slowing down. Even the sponsorship is slowing down at the moment. But it's like, we see things like this moments in time, and instead of worrying about why you shouldn't do it, just fucking do it and figure it out.
Yeah. No, exactly. And then keeping your ears open, or I guess mind open to what is the next monetization of the next piece, right? So no, you're thinking about it the right way 100%.
What do you think about influencer businesses? Let's say like Prime, for instance, right? Prime, and there's a few other variations now. Obviously, they've had their own success and stories and so on and so forth. When I spoke to Sabri Subi about this, he said like a lot of them might not have the legs to last. And he mentioned that like, yeah, they'll get the bag in a short time, good launches, but a lot of times they don't have the infrastructure to build, or they might not have the right partner. I know you mentioned the partners, people, especially Chris Williamson, who we partnered with. How do you think about that? Do you think that there's a lot of longevity in that?
Influencer businesses lack soul as a whole in today's world. That became another gold rush because of a couple people that had like really crazy stories and like a reason for the why. Like you look at some of the OG influencer brands, even Alani. Alani Nutrition is the other brand held by Congo, which owns Prime. And Alani started, it's a girl's energy drink. And that started because Katie Hearn, the influencer partner, had bad hormonal issues. And they created a product called Balance, a supplement product. And there's a story. And when there's a story and a reason comes a cult following. You look at my friends at Bloom. This is going to be a multi-billion-dollar business. One of my best friends, the owner, you know, it's a husband and wife. Mari is the face. She's an influencer. She has 400,000 on IG, and they came out with this greens product because she had, you know, crazy bloating issues and skin and all that, and so they formulated that for that reason. And you go micro there. There's a story on that brand. There's a reason why it exists, right? And they've grown over the years, and it's been real, you know, bootstrapped, and other women buy into the concept, and all of a sudden, like, now they're launching an energy drink, and people don't even know Mari's like as associated. Whereas you have Prime, where once you get through the fandom and like the, oh my God, it's Logan and KSI, you're like, wait, what's actually going on here? Why did these people do this? Wait. It's clearly a money grab.
You know, Logan is making a shampoo. Have you heard about this?
Jake's or
Jake,
Logan?
Jake, one. I can't even tell the
And then
difference.
Jake's doing W. I could talk about all of that. And so what happened is people realized these audiences, to your point, are largely cash based. Like Logan, you're getting your YouTube CPMs or whatever. They're still making a ton of money, but they go, wait, Conor McGregor just became a billionaire off Proper 12. Or wait, you know, Ryan Reynolds became a billionaire off Proper or Aviation Gin or whatever, right? And so they're seeing that. And then it largely became a soulless money grab. And Prime is the best example of it. Those motherfuckers, they had the right partner. Like the Alani already had all of the distribution. They blitzed that market. Like colorful, pretty branding, blitzed it. Hundreds of millions of sales in the first year. Year two, wait, this actually isn't a good product. Wait, people don't still want it. Wait, how many more hype levers can we pull? And all of a sudden it pulls back. And it goes from like, oh, we got the next Gatorade to, is this even an operationally functional business? And so W is another interesting case. These guys have incredible audiences. They really do. Like Jake is a phenomenal fucking marketer. Jake Paul is one of the best marketers I've ever seen in my life. Like just through and through, how he promotes fights to his original Vine days. Jake Paul knows what he's doing. And so the W launch has been fun. But you look at something like that. Those guys raised a pre-money valuation of I think 50 or $100 million. I didn't see the deck on that one. I had a friend call me who was like, before they've ever made a sale, because of these names involved, you know, you show that, oh, we got Sean O'Malley, Ruby Rose, the Dream Team. They are raising money at $50 to $100 million. So if you're an investor putting $1 in that, you are banking on that being $1 billion thing to get like a meaningful return in CPG. And that is highly unlikely. Now, Jake and that team, if they don't raise money and they do that themselves, can Jake Paul have a $50 million a year revenue business that makes 5 to 10 million profit in a category like that? I would think so. Like I would, story or no story. Like audience is a real thing. But then you look at like Bloom, who literally bootstrapped it all from greens to energy to recently they partnered with a big energy drink company to do their rollout. That's going to be a multi-billion-dollar business because it had soul when I bring it back full circle. So Iman's is an interesting take. Iman's another phenomenal marketer, one of the best. But that's something that matches his audience and what he does. Like he genuinely seems to want to drink that. And then I find myself like drinking it too. Like I like Big Day. So I'm like, okay, this might have a place in the culture. That's when you flip a coin. So I don't think it's like boom or bust with all of this. I just think, do these businesses have a why? And then that will ultimately determine it. Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense, man. It makes perfect sense. I think people can suss this out. They can identify it, look at it, and think, I don't think Logan, whatever it is, particularly gives a shit about it, you know? Whereas like for Iman, who's very deliberate with his brand, like how it's been created, the atmosphere he creates, environment he creates, yes, it's intentional. There's a direct alignment. Now he has the app that complements it. He's branched out much more than just helping people build an agency. Yeah. Does that make sense? It's full circle. You mentioned a good point about like to get to 50 million. Well, at the end of the day, it's going to be about operations, right?
Yeah.
You know, so that woman that you mentioned that bootstrapped it, well, theirs was painful and it was from the zero, but they filled in the gaps, problem solution continuum. They were able to fill it as they went and they learned and they partnered with the right people. So it's almost like it will all depend on the back end and how much cash they have to burn at the same time. Do you want to know how we book the most amazing guests on our podcast like you're seeing today? I've created a full template and guide and every single script that I've ever used to get the best guests in the world, and I've put everything together in a simple step-by-step process. If you click the link down below, I'll give you the exact guide to book any guests on your podcast and have a full guest management system for you to manage every single guest. If you want to see the process behind booking guests like Justin Waller, Luke Belmar, Sterling Cooper, and every guest in the online business space, click the link down below and you'll get the full guide for free. Thank you.
All those pieces, because even Prime, like that is the right partner in terms of the operational partner. Those guys, Congo brands, they're not like public, but they're not super hidden. Dogs, like the way they started building Alani the same time I built Genius. They started in supplements, and those guys doubled, tripled down. They took all their in-house cash, launched Energy. Like anyone who knows CPG well knows they are two of the hardest hitting motherfuckers there are. Like period.
What about like, is it Kardashian's brand Skims, like, Skims, some shit like that. Like, what's your thoughts on something like that? Because that's into retail now. They have their own stores. I was in LA recently, and it was fucking everywhere. How do you think about that? Because that's at a bigger scale then, right?
I think there's an argument to be made too that at a certain gravity, like it eats the world. Like, I mean, really, like the Rock is in a similar thing where I don't know how Zoa will shake out, but at a certain gravity, like when you have that, we live in a world of mimetic culture, and that's like humans don't know what they want, so they want what others want. And with social media, the Kardashians in particular, like Kanye realized this, dating Kim, he goes, oh, whatever we put on her, she does. And kind of him to the same extent, right? And that's kind of how like they pop, like Balenciaga became a thing and everyone dresses based off Yeezy nowadays. Kanye was like one of the first ones to, from an entrepreneurial perspective, go, oh, we have the keys to the game. Why are we giving all this money away to others? And then he realized that, oh shit, the infrastructure is crazy. I need Adidas's help, right? So there's like that's the wrestling there. But like the Kardashians are one that they've gotten so good at what I would really say deception, you know, because they don't give a fuck about anything other than like their brand and money. That they'll sell that story, they'll sell that whatever. And at that scale, when you have that many followers, and then not just them as individuals, but that social circle, right? It's like Kim does something, and then her 4 goblin sister. I shouldn't bash them. They might get me one day. They'll make people disappear. But you look at that gravity, and it's like it's effective.
What do you think about the optics, so in like the online space in specific? Because if you looked at Kardashians, right? And there's this kind of bullshit, and people coming out of reality TV is kind of bullshit. But then that works to us. But that works though. But again, I guess it's the consumer on their end. If it's a 17-year-old girl who's probably like super insecure, she's gonna buy it, right?
But you forget though, we are like in a very, very, very small subset of people that generally have a curiosity as to how the world works. 9 out of 10 people do what they're told. Iman understands this super well. Iman's portrayal of personal brand is so elite. He knows if I dress a certain way and if I portray this image, like there's an investment in it. I guarantee you Iman's like cost of maintaining image is disgusting. I assure you it's disgusting. Cause like, again, like I know billionaires and they don't need 6 SUVs to roll them up to the, G5
to open his door.
Huh?
To open his door.
To open his door. And you know what I mean? Like they don't need that, but it sure fucking looks good, And but it just shows like those are the people that get how this world works, and to me, it's respectable. And the very top of that, Kardashians and people like Drake as well know how this game works extremely well.
So how does someone do that if they're just figuring shit out? If they're an entrepreneur, they're building up to this. They're building up their brand. Should it be more optics or should it be more authentic?
What a question. What a question. Because I think my opinion is I'm the working case study of this.
I would not agree with that.
Like actually, no, of that question.
No, but for you, you've done the work, right? You have the receipts. The problem is for young people, they don't have the receipts. They want to be in the rooms that they can't get into. They're trying to impress people who don't actually care. So they're trying to perceive or create a persona that they don't actually have yet. It's a gap between where you are and where you want to be.
No, for sure. But if you're just talking effectiveness from a personal brand and digital perspective, of authenticity versus what was it? Authenticity versus
the optics.
Optics. I actually think all of it matters like so deeply, and that's why I said like I like talk about this publicly with like I wear certain glasses because I know they'll get more views, and that's an optics thing. It doesn't matter, what I did business wise if people aren't looking in the first place. And so I've been an ongoing experiment with the with the reality that I'm only going to be authentic with it, period. Just because like I've already put everything out there and I continue to do it.
Mhm.
So I don't really have that choice. But then the question is, how much do optics matter around that? Because I'm super big on that. Like I want to make sure image is curated a specific way
Mhm.
because I've seen what happens when if it doesn't, it doesn't work. Like it just, you know what I mean? If you lose, you have to know what elements make up you. Like as
Aesthetic
a,
elements.
huh?
The aesthetic elements.
100%. Yeah. And just, and then those general optics too of like, do I want to go on a podcast with like, would I go on a podcast with a drop shipping scammer and like talk to them in a certain way? Like, fuck no. You know what I mean? It's like those types of optics. So all those things matter really well. I think Iman's played it phenomenal in our world. You even look at like Hormozy and Chris Williamson, and they've done a very good job of being, like propping each other up and being a very certain crew. My First Million, like I'm friends with those guys, but similar deal. All those pieces matter in the game we're playing online.
That's interesting, right? Because if you think about that space of Hormozy, Chris Williamson, even like that kind of era of like Robert Greene, which I saw appeared on Modernism recently, they're kind of in a different category. You notice that? Like if I was to start interviewing like those people, it would just be a different audience. It's like a mismatch. Does that make sense? It's almost like you need to like you have the audience and you're creating inverse. Like your optics are dependent on the audience.
Potentially, yeah. I mean, I just think they have really big audiences, but I wouldn't say like when you reach out to do this, like I say no to like a huge amount of people, and like 10 minutes to your stuff. I'm like, okay, this is my type of guy. Like this would be good for me, be good for you. Like it's a net. I think those guys just have bigger audiences at this point, but they're still like My First Million would never bring on someone who solely runs a course business. Never in a million years. You know what I mean? No matter how big the audience was.
Yeah. And that's their values.
That's their values.
It's their values.
Exactly.
So
I guess we could tie it back to values too. When we optics and values just became kind of interchangeable.
Yeah.
But some people it's not. Some people like only care about optics. Like another person we were talking about offline. That.
Very interesting, man. Tell me about how you created that for Her Loss. Like the video for that is so sick. I like how you mentioned storytelling. Did you create that yourself? Like how do you walk through that kind of process?
I did. I think when building a brand, one of the best things you can do is have tailwinds of like what exists culturally at the time. And you can kind of tap into that a little bit. Like what was the biggest thing 2 years ago? Like in our general space.
Tate, red
pill.
Yeah.
Now, you could not open that phone without seeing red pill this, red pill that.
Control your woman.
Yeah, 100%, right? And but even like during that Top Shelf, we launched like Alpha Grind. And I'm never like directly like, oh, this is me. Like but Alpha Grind in its name of itself and the branding, like that resonated with everyone who was watching those people. And I'm looking more now at like the current world, and one of like the big trends has just become this, it's like the next evolution of that. There's much more of this, the world is at a place that, are you familiar with hip hop and stuff or not?
Not really.
Not really. But there's like Drake and Future, and the way they gamify their lives around women is like, it's like super comical. Like they because of like the again, I'm not trying to get political. I'm just explaining the thought process behind this product and why it's positioned the way it is. Like in Miami here, you have a lot of women who like use guys for money. It's like that's why kind of the red pill thing spawned. And then you get voices like Tate, oh, control them, this, that, whatever. And then on the other side of that, you have like Drake and Future who are like, no, hold on. Make them deeply fall in love with you. And then the second they misbehave, like, or not misbehave is a terrible word. Again, not trying to get political, but the second they betray your trust, which they always will in that world, like based off the Bible of Future. It's hard to have this conversation without the hip hop backing, but then you like immediately disgage and their heart's broken indefinitely, and it's sorry for your loss, her loss. And you extrapolate that out to young men, and it's fun positioning, it's memeable positioning, because that's how the world like communicates in today's world, right? And then if you go from like a pure ethics and value standpoint, and you take it to like that younger generation, like one of the guys that works on my YouTube team, Presley. Shout out Presley.
Oh, I've seen that dude.
Yeah, great kid, and has struggled with like, had some bad women situations, whatever. and you get to kind of reposition at the core of that. The key is to just focus on becoming like you at an elite standard and not learning about those things,
Mm-hmm.
or not worrying about those things. And the
Mm.
end result is if you continue to glow up as a man, that girl that broke your heart is ultimately going to be sorry for your loss, ma'am. And that's
Mm.
kind of the fun positioning of all of it. And honestly, it was so refreshing to be like, it's a bit more of a luxury category, and it's a steer away from really the red pill thing became so insufferable. Like
Mm.
how many, I just couldn't hear it anymore. You know what I mean? Before
Mm.
it's like, okay, but it's like, all right, it's a fun message, but kind of clean at the beginning of it and has potential to scale.
Yeah, and you made that video around like why young men
Feel
aren't heard in society. Why did you make that?
Which one?
Recently, you put up a video which was like called "Why Young Men Aren't Seen in Society Anymore."
Yeah, yeah.
What's the logic behind that?
It's that, and that was kind of my inspiration for it.
Mm.
I just didn't realize how many young men are just like simply not heard or treated as like another number, or like
Mhm.
just not taken seriously, and it pushes them away from pursuing their creative goals, and it forces them to draw inside the box, and it ends up with like that incel culture,
Mm.
like the gross one that's like control your woman. It's like the person on the other side of the Tate thing screaming that is a like 110-pound twig who's only stared at his computer for the last 12 years.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so it was inspired by those guys, and I just acted on it.
Mm. But even those guys that are in that kind of bracket, like that's why this hate stuff really resonated, because it was like, shit, yeah, these guys are not heard by anyone. They're fucked into this like mass area that they're just treated the same, and there's a 1% of guys that get ahead, and that's kind of it, right?
Yeah, we want to fuel that.
But again, like there is truth to that though. Like that did happen, as in there's a bigger divide between the normal and the guys that are crushing it, you know?
It's extreme. And anyone is extreme. And then anyone that's like bought into any of this messaging, at the center of it, I'm calling it life maxing, where it's
Yeah.
like you have your scorecard. And Jimmy's the best example of this. When I met Jimmy, he was probably making 10 grand a month living in Arizona, which is like kind of good for internet, kind of, right? But he kind of dressed dorky. Like he said he hadn't gotten laid in like 6 months. He had it on his wrist tattooed. One day, Jimmy Farley will be somebody. And over the past 18 months, like you look at a picture from him then to a picture now, and me too, of just the rapid character development on the business front,
Mm.
on the fashion front. Like he like everyone, oh, this dude dresses crazy, to the end result of the woman front. Like he doesn't want anything to do with girls right now because he's so focused on business, and it just makes him more, in the last year.
Makes it more attractive.
Yeah, and I've had to separate, like, there's been like 3 girls that have reached out to me because they want him to love them so bad. For whatever reason, they thought reaching out to me was a good, like seriously, 3.
Why
Of,
would
like,
they think that's a good idea?
They're that in love. But it just shows what happens when you life max and commit to that full process of like, he's focused on him. He's running up, he's probably making a couple $100,000 a month. He's got equity in the brands. He got a little, Lamborghini Urus down here, all while actually doing it. Because at the center of that, he's not, he's bought into life maxing.
I think that life maxing approach is sick. I think it's really cool, man, because it's just like so counter to, again, the fucking scale up a business and then just be depressed and fat and bald. And that's the reason, one of the reasons why I don't live in Dubai is that I feel like the culture's not around optimizing your life. And not optimizing the wrong word, but just maximizing your life in terms of the relationship side, which I want to chat to you about, and the health side.
Yeah.
Right? Because we're both gym bros. I know you're a boxer now, that's your main focus. But like health is still a proponent, right? You don't want to be fat,
That's the
bald,
center of it.
and just, like,
What's the
depressed.
point of life if you can't be
Exactly,
healthy,
right?
move, yeah.
And also, like, it's so funny. One of my mentors, I'm actually crewing him on an ultra marathon soon. He's doing a backyard ultra, and the guy kind of eats shitty food. And I got him onto good food. I mean, he's in his 50s, and he's like, "Dude, like, this is how you're meant to feel." I'm like, "Yeah, dude, it took you 55 fucking years, but now you feel good, right?" It's an interesting thing, right? Because there is the wealth over on that side. Now, I do want to ask you about relationships. So again, in the incel red pill space, it's like have 15 different wives. How come you got married?
I mean, that was just one of the ones that was like it was like the easiest decision of my life. I told you she supported me in the basketball years, and I really struggled with girls like high school and even early college. Like I was a late bloomer. I was like 5'3" my sophomore year. Some people don't believe that. I'll throw a picture up there somewhere, but like legit, like I developed late. And so I'm heartbroken in high school and just a lot of stuff. And I felt like I always wanted like a wife, and it just never came. Right. And
Mm.
that freshman year of college is when I first started to really focus on me across the board. Like, I remember getting my first tattoo. I remember hitting the gym like way more religiously. Like
Sick.
that became my life. And I'm telling this story in hindsight now, right? Like at the time, I'm just this kid who's like starting to become a man, but I was
Mm.
very focused on me. Like I'd given up on the idea of like,
Mm.
I wasn't chasing girls or I wasn't anything like that. And she just kind of gravitated into my life. And I remember thinking like from day one, it's like, oh, this is exactly who I would want. And I
Mm.
kind of thought I'd marry her like from the very beginning. And I didn't have to go through, like I said, it's a different world now. It's a scary world now. Like when I
Mm.
talk about Jimmy with where he's at in life, like I think it'd be very hard to find a wife in Western culture, but I was lucky then and got married, and she's progressed me as an individual to like I guarantee I'd be nothing close to who I am today if it wasn't for her.
Sick. I love that,
So
man.
yeah.
So in what way was she supportive? Because I think most guys don't understand this. I completely agree with you. I'm in the exact same position. That's why I asked you. But in
Shout
what?
out.
But in terms of like, of course, she was there on a basketball court, but more on the emotional side versus the logical side, would you say?
Two sides, because she's actually super logical as well. Ask the question one more time. I have the perfect.
So in what way was she actually supportive?
There's two types of women that I've kind of gathered now out in the world. Most of them expect to be taken care of. They like tend to extract things. They want to be this picture that they have in their head. And then there's another set of women, which
Mm.
is much smaller, that really take pride in making a guy better in some way, shape, or form. And that often starts emotionally. Like women are generally more emotional, generally more in touch with emotions, whereas guys aren't. And those can be huge roadblocks, right? You
Mm.
can have anger, you can have this, you can have that. And I realized my wife's ability to be in tune with that stuff and improve it or soothe it over, or just as a voice to talk about, like a genuine level of care.
Mm.
Because I really do think the tweet I saw, and it's like most guys just want a woman that's gonna make them exponentially better,
Mhm.
like deep down, right? And I think a lot of guys are afraid to say that, but there's a small few out there, women wise, that
Mm.
they're really all about that. And I don't know if it's their DNA. I don't know if that's how they were raised. Like I'm sure your wife's like that.
Mm.
It's not idolized. It's not praised. It's not even talked about, right? And so I think as a result, we get more the Kardashianification of women,
Mm.
where it's like I just want to look great all day, and people are gonna like,
Give me shit.
yeah,
There's also a third variation, which is like a girl that will compete with you on MRR.
well,
Right?
no,
Who's
I
on the
think
same
that,
pursuit.
yeah, it's a variation of that. Like
It's a variation of
they
that.
end up not getting what they want, so I'm gonna take care of myself.
Mm.
I'm boss bitch and this, that, and they get in this real masculine energy.
Mm.
And it's polar opposite of what they actually are, like
Mm.
the actual essence. And all of a sudden that gets misogynist or this or that, where I'm speaking from personal experience.
Yeah.
Like we've had I've developed, she has a great life. Because now she has all of the things that all of those women want, and she's never been into material stuff, but she like really, like I had to go, like I bought her a Chanel bag and she has the nice Van Cleef and she likes it and appreciates it, but she was never like, oh, I'm doing this for that.
She's not seeking it.
Literally never.
And it's also like something fun. It is when you have the availability of cash. It is fun to fly private. It's fun to fly
yeah,
business
for
class.
sure.
But it's like
sure.
it's also the fruits of your labor.
For sure.
You mentioned more money, more is it pressure to keep it. You mentioned before that people have that scarcity. To be full transparency, I actually have a little bit of that. So weird, dude. Like in terms of business, taking bets in the business, I don't really have much of an issue. But I know that I'm a guy that I can eat chicken and rice on a $19 a month gym membership.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's breaking that belief. Now I do it, okay? But it's like met with internal resistance.
No, I think that's a normal, trait. You have more to lose. I mean, it's not more difficult than that. It's like everyone's gonna have that. And so the key is to not let it evolve into true scarcity mindset, right? Or cloud your judgment to the point that you're no longer playing to win, you're playing to lose. Because we got to a point anyway where we're at because of good decision making and because of instincts, and you have to let those continue to take place. Very often at a certain point you have to bet the farm, right? That's when we maybe pause a little bit. But like you said, it's like the point of all of this is like if you work backwards from the goals that you want, you start engineering the risks you need to take, you know? And
Who to hire, what to do, what
all of
systems
it,
to build.
all of it, with the understanding that a lot of them won't go well, and then you'll find the occasional Jimmy, or you'll find the occasional whatever, and it'll exponentially grow everything. But what did I say about that? The universe on the Jimmy one, like I felt like that came from just such a pure place on my end, and good intentions, and putting all that like positive stuff out in the universe. And since I've operated that way, like intentionally,
Yeah.
like that's why I talk about scarcity mindset and trying to obliterate it and all that stuff. My life has just continued to get better and better, even while things are relatively tough out there.
Yeah, and it's also exposure. The more you expose yourself to different environments, whether it's like we're sitting down now, we're just having a chat, like this could materialize into whatever in
That
3
was
years'
actually a
time.
wildly logical way to think about the same thing.
Do you get
Like,
me?
I love that. Yeah, I love that.
Because it's like, I call it the non-tangibles. And
Yeah.
content is the most non-tangible thing you could have ever imagined. Because it's like, all right, we got 10,000 views. What does that mean?
Yeah.
Do you get me? But it's all the sub things that happen. Because bear in mind, like the whole idea of business and commerce didn't exist prehistoric. We just had like tribes and we were interacting with each other.
Yeah.
And hopefully didn't steal their girl or kill someone, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, we're just doing that on a real basis.
No, that was a great take, because I do wrestle sometimes. I'm a very logical person.
Yeah.
I spent a lot of time, like, you know, after I made a bunch of money, thinking of how to protect it, and reading all the mathematical models around that.
Yeah.
And then like the key takeaway is that everything ends up coming from risks we can't even anticipate anyway. Black swans. It's like the majority of everything is dictated by that. And so I'm like, wait a second. So you're telling me I can expect 8% returns indefinitely on average, unless we go to World War III, but the world keeps getting crazier? Well, hold on. And then you're telling me the Fed will do this, like, you know, and so I've come to realize there's extreme uncertainty. And so it's more around how you operate, how you carry yourself, how you invest in yourself. And then the center of life maxing for me too, like the key stat that everyone needs to focus on is between the ears. Like, period. That's why I love fighting. And that's why I love anything that makes you tougher mentally. I actually love like overworking myself the day before, or like I take a fucking Adderall and can't sleep, and then still having to get up and train the next day. It's gonna be shitty. And in the past, I'd be like, oh, it's shitty. I'm like, no, hold on. There's a reason John Jones can go on a bender the week of the fight and still come in there and kill, because he's that tough here. Like, actually, and that's like kind of a comical answer, but really when you think about
Mike Tyson's the exact same, right?
McGregor, I mean, you know.
Same.
And when you think
They're up all
about
night.
someone's, like a billionaire's ability to handle stress and how tough their mindset has to be, because I've experienced this as I grow. Like, I have all these different businesses now. Something is literally always going wrong, always. And your answer earlier about how you process that, like, you know, you wake up and the Slack's all like, oh, there's a fire, but your answer was right. It's like, there's a fire. Of course, there's a fire. It's like, I wouldn't don't ask for a lot of what is it? Don't ask for a lot of food on your plate if you're not ready to eat, or something
like that.
Something like that. I butcher quotes. I should like pre-rehearse them so they go viral. But on that note, sorry, a billionaire's ability to handle stress. You think about like Bezos's life with Amazon and Blue Origin and personal ventures, and just that ability to handle all of that indefinitely on an ongoing basis. Or even a guy like Trump, you know, you don't have to blur his name or whatever, but love him or hate him, just the ability to be facing lawsuits and this and that. And
bullets.
Like, bullets, literal bullets, and then still be able to walk to your conference the next day, tune it all out. And, you know, it's like but that's developed over time. And so that's the center of life maxing.
Is there any vices that you're fighting at the moment?
Good question. No, I wouldn't say that I'm fighting. No, I'm like comfortable with a lot of different vices. Like, we're friends, you know, we check in from time to time. I'm kidding, that was kind of a joke. I would say I'm just in that obsession phase where
everything's in alignment.
Yeah, and I've been good there.
Anything on like the addiction side? I know you mentioned Adderall before. Do you ever start like taking that again?
Yeah, like I said, I take it again recently, and I'm just super cautious with it. Like, when I was building Genius, I took it a lot. I've talked about this. I was like a kid who was stupid. But as this recent world, it'd be like, all right, I might do this once every 2 weeks, and then make sure I got an IV and this more.
Would you replace it with nicotine at all?
Yeah.
Would you replace it with nicotine gums, right? Yeah, like Zins and shit.
Hmm.
That also has a second life too, right?
Yeah, no, definitely. Like
There's also an effect of that.
those are their own issues.
Yeah, man.
Everything. I think it's silly to try to be an angel in this world. I think it's silly to try to be Brian Johnson. I think it's silly to measure because what's the quality of life?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? What's the
Point.
quality of life? Like one other story. I used to do like Molly in college 10 years ago or whatever, and hadn't done any drugs. I didn't drink for like a 4 or 5 year period. And my wife and I went to Vegas for like a huge event with my other business partner in last November. And can you talk about drug use on here?
Yeah, all the time.
And you know, we did Molly, and it was literally like the kids were being babysat by my parents, and we had the best night of our life. It like we talk about relationships and rekindling, you know, fires and all that stuff. It was like literally the best night we've had in 10 years. And we were up till 5 a.m. and it was horrible. And then we slept all next day. And was it good for our health? Of course not. Was it good for the soul? Probably. Right. And so
that's where the benefit of like actually drinking for the relationship, what you're going to get is going to be much better than like sitting at home and running another funnel.
Yeah.
Do you get me?
Yeah.
There's all those other, it's like on life maxing, if one of the things like health dips, but relationships and
10Xs,
yeah,
you can pick that other one up.
But it's also balances out, right?
It's a huge balance. And I think the more intentional and calculated,
and
just understanding that, again, you're not going to be perfect. Like, could you imagine, I was early on the biohacking stuff. If you saw my old content, Genius Days. Yeah. Like, could you imagine needing a ring to tell you if you're going to have a good day or not? No, and people are really like that. Like they, oh my God, my readiness is only 63. I'm going to skip the gym and this and that. It's like, then stop living. I don't know. Like life's dynamic. And the more we submit to that and embrace it and build ourselves, the better off we're going to be.
How would that ever work if you had like businesses, children, a wife? Like if there's so much different variables coming on, your fucking score is going to be 40, 50 every single day, right? And again, there's merit to tracking your health, becoming healthy. But then there's also a point where it's like, okay, forget about that. You need to just focus on actually maximizing what you're doing.
Yeah, I think at the center of it for me, if you remember that you have to be a certain person for people, it never takes you too far off path.
So for your kids?
For my 2 daughters, I remember like nothing will ever be strong enough in any way, shape, or form to pull me away from knowing who I need to be as a man, like period. And that'll continue to morph and shape my behavior. And one last hip hop reference for you, because this doesn't get talked about enough. Everyone knows Eminem, right?
Yeah.
Eminem was the craziest, like wildest dude. And he was really like a Tate level of controversy before Tate. He was pulled off MTV, serious drug issues, was like, but really as big as it gets from a superstardom standpoint. Eminem quit drugs cold turkey one day when he realized his daughter Haley needed him. And his music's never been the same. And he's still a megastar, but like Eminem was never the same. Like Eminem had retired. He was now Marshall, a normal functioning human. And you know what? That dude who talks about killing and murder, like some of the most aggressive, egregious songs you've ever heard in your life. His daughter seems to be a very normal functioning person who just got married. And I think that shows the power of like that being in tune with like who you need to be for others.
Fuck, man, that's such a good point to finish up on. Anything else that you've changed to be like a better father?
I started fighting. Started fighting because you never know when some of these young boys are going to come around asking for days. Got better at shooting.
Dude, I would not want to knock on the door and see you with the glasses. Come on, I'm like,
be good tonight, y'all. No, I think again, I've been it's been humbling. And I think the more you're humbled and in tune with being humbled, the more you progress in your own life. Like it's not comfortable having other people depend on you. It's just inherently not comfortable. And with little girls, there's a permanent feeling of that. But you're not growing if you don't experience that, right? And so being in tune with that, being okay with it, not ignoring it, but just accepting that others depend on you and then letting that shape your behavior in a dynamic world, I think it's special.
And that's why you can get a lot of lessons from you and also someone to want to partner with because you are playing long-term games, right? You have children, you have a wife, you have long-term business partners. You've built a business. Does that make sense?
You have to.
It's versus like a 16-year-old in Miami. That's like I rented my Rolex. Different dynamic, different output.
Rented Rolex is crazy. But that's like you'll find that in Miami and maybe Dubai.
Really? Fuck, dude. I want to say a big thank you, man. Hopefully this was unique for you. This was different. And I appreciate everything you do.
No, it was amazing, bro. For real. Thank you for having me on. You got a gift with this stuff, and I'm looking forward to seeing where
Yeah,
the
man.
career goes too.